Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hello and welcome once again to Cheap Shot Entertainment. It is a new year, which means that we're still going 20 years into the past for our retro reviews, and it's 2001. So it is the final year of WCW and ECW, so we're going to be doing those pay-per-views as well as the WWE pay-per-views, but we're going to look at a WCW pay-per-view today. It is WCW Sin, and it took place on the 14th of January 2001 in the run-up to WWE absorbing the company. And you know what? They put on a damn good show because they know that's going to happen. It would fizzle out, unfortunately, by greed in March, but let's have a look at everything that happened at WCW Sin on January 14th, 2001.
This is awesome!
So the capacity attendance for WCW Sin in January was 6,617 people packed into the Conseco Field House in Indianapolis, and I'm guessing that's named after Jose Canseco, who is a baseball player over in America. I'm guessing that's who he plays for. Not really a fan of baseball at all. Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson are on commentary for this one, which makes it really interesting because Scott Hudson is a decent commentator and Tony Schiavone is an absolute legend. Of course, he is on AEW now, commentating with then WWE commentator JR and Excalibur. There you go, I got it in the end on AEW. And we go straight into the first match, and it is the Cruiserweight Championship match. It is Shane Helms, also known as the Hurricane, or Sugar Shane in this case, because he is part of the group known as 3 Count, 1, 2, 3 Count. And Chavo Guerrero is your Cruiserweight Champion. Always a good bet on Chavo Guerrero being Cruiserweight Champion there or thereabouts and carrying that championship really well around his waist, because he is really, really good, and he would prove that in WWE as well. So the Nightmare on Helm Street would get reversed in the final sequence of this match. Really good match, actually. Really showcases the talent on offer in WCW, especially in the Cruiserweight division. And come March for Greed, they would actually commission a new championship, which was the Cruiserweight Tag Team Championships. Of course, they didn't last very long because of being absorbed into WWE, but this really did give rise to the Cruiserweight Championship. WWE had their light heavyweight championship, but really the Cruiserweights are what made WCW what they were, and up to that point, and it just gave WCW that extra little thing, and it was no different here. Nightmare on Helm Street was reversed into a brainbuster, which was Chavo's finisher at the time, and he gets the pin for the win and retains the championship in what was a high octane, really good, really fast, good showcase and bouncing around everywhere showcase of the Cruiserweights. And it's everything that Cruiserweight division is kind of coming back to now, because they were pretty much grounded when they were on the normal shows, but now we've still got 205 Live, and they're showcasing everything that they can do on 205 Live, and it's great. Chavo retains, and like I say, in a decent match. I'm going to give this 3 cheap shots out of 5 for the opening contest. Really, really good opening to the show. The next sequence is Ric Flair arriving in his limousine. He is on the side of the faces. At this point, he is very much a fan favourite and also the CEO of WCW. The Marmalukes, or the FBI actually, Tony Marmaluke and Oh no, it is the Mamalukes actually. They're on ECW. Interview with Mean Gene Okerlund, and then we go into the next match, which is Big Vito and Reno, or versus Reno, in a brothers fight. So the Mamalukes have split up. One brother attacked the other brother, and this is what we get. And to say that these two know each other quite well, I'm not sure if they're brothers or whether it's just that little word, kayfabe. They beat the snot out of each other, and again, it was really enjoyable. It was a good match. Two big hosses of guys putting in a shift in this one. And do love a massive hoss fight. Just two guys beating each other up for the sake of doing so. That is wrestling. That is part of the reason I like it. But it would be Reno who would get the victory in this one. I didn't write it down. I had to remember then it would be Reno who get the victory on this one, hitting the roll the dice on his big brother, proving that he was the new leader of the family, the head of the table, dare I say that, Roman Reigns. And another great match. Again, 3 out of 5. And so far, I'm really impressed with this pay-per-view. Gotta say, really, really impressed. And it would continue throughout the night. So the next sequence would be Mike Sanders trying to pay Chronic to come out and interfere in his match with the Cat later on. Doing an APA thing here. Chronic would be Brian Adams and Brian... can't even remember his name, to be honest. But they're both called Brian, doing the sort of APA, Biker Gang, Disciples of Apocalypse thing. Of course, Brian Adams was in the Disciples of Apocalypse in WWE. And we would get then a tag team, actually no, it is a tag team match, pretty much a cruiserweight tag team match. It is the Young Dragons, which is Yang and Kaz, versus Jamie Noble and Evan Courageous. Obviously Noble would go on to WWE, as well as Jimmy Wang Yang. I'm guessing it's Yang. I mean, they looks like him, although it'd take a little while to actually get there. And again, really good match. Good showcase for the cruiserweights and the decision to make that cruiserweight tag team championship available to those cruiserweights. Really hard hitting, really high flying. There was lots of bouncing around, Asai moonsaults and all that kind of stuff, but it would be an inside cradle that would win the match. And it surprises Noble, who is on the wrong end of the pin, and the Young Dragons win. So they get I think they move forward to some kind of title shot in the future for the WCW Tag Team Championships. And yeah, like I say, towards the end of WCW, they would commission a new championship, and it would be crowned at WCW Greed in March. But again, really good match. Really impressed with the Young Dragons, and another 3 cheap shots out of 5. These two would go on to impress me throughout the whole of my watching through of the WCW pay-per-views at the beginning of 2001, and gotta say, one of my favourites, having watched all 3 WCW pay-per-views. So the next sequence is Bagwell and Luger arriving in a hot rod, doing all sorts of jokey kind of things, and it really baffles me, and it's not in the character that I always thought about Lex Luger, that he's doing the jokey stuff. I can see it from Buff Bagwell, but Luger is really, I mean, he's got very small amount of charisma, and it's all in his look and what he does in the ring. But these two apparently are called Totally Buffed, and they arrive in a hot rod. The WCW Commissionership is on the line next, and one thing I did notice about these 3 pay-per-views is that the Cat gets a lot of airtime, lots of matches, and the Commissionership seems like it's an extra championship. in the early part of WCW in 2001. But the managerial services of Miss Jones are on the line as well. She comes out with the Cat. It is Ernest the Cat Miller versus Mike Sanders. Of course, he tried to pay Chronic off earlier on, but we do get an attack by the Natural Born Thrillers, who Mike Sanders seems like he's the leader of. Natural Born Thrillers are a set of 4 huge guys, gotta say, and they've come through the ranks at the training facility owned by WCW, and yeah, really impressed with these guys. Mark Jindrak, Plumbo, Sean O'Hare, Sean Stasiak, all 4 of them coming through together. Egos would get in the way eventually, but they seem to be on the same page here. But an attack by Chronic on the Natural Born Thrillers would give Ernest the Cat Miller the win after he hits the super kick to Sanders to get the pin. Yeah, lots of interference in this one. Definitely the worst match on the card. I'm guessing Ernest the Cat Miller, being the commissioner at this point, wasn't a full roster working superstar in WCW at this point. So I'm going to give him a break on that one. I'm going to give this 1.5 stars out of 5. Although furthering a storyline, I didn't much like the commissionership being on the line every single pay-per-view of 2001, and it would be on the line again in February. I don't think he was on the line in March, but yeah, he did get a match in March as well. But 1.5 cheap shots out of 5 for this one. Goldberg is due to challenge Scott Steiner for the WCW Heavyweight Championship at the end of the night, and he sits down with Ric Flair, telling Flair not to worry, he would walk out with that championship and he would put his body on the line to do so. Of course, Sarge is going into the match with him, I think, at this point. Jeff Jarrett interview with Mean Gene Okerlund, and we go on to the next match, which is special referee. Hacksaw Jim Duggan comes down to the ring and he announces that it's a penalty box match. I'm sure this was arranged beforehand because they've got the shark cages and stuff like that, and it does involve Team Canada, so I'm guessing that's why they do the penalty box match. In hindsight, the WWE have used that sort of idea to keep people in when they're doing the War Games match, so it wasn't a total loss. I just feel like they didn't really work out the kinks from this match before actually saying, yeah, that's fine, we'll just do this, because it was very stop-start. And we've got Team Canada, which is Storm, Lance Storm, Mike Awesome and Elix Skipper, versus the Filthy Animals, that is Conan, Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman. The idea is that that basically if you break one of the rules, which is, there's a lot of rules, chair shots, interference, that kind of thing, and including the people who come out with them, they could get put in the penalty box. And it was very stop-start, because every time something happened, or you know, Jim Duggan thought that something was happening, they got put in the penalty box. So the match stopped, he would put them in the penalty box. It got a bit smoother towards the end, and it's like I say, it's a good idea, it's something different, I like that, but it needed some kinks working out of it before actually commissioning. But the Canadian Maple Leaf would be the deciding factor here by Lance Storm on Billy Kidman, who taps out to give Team Canada the win. Like I say, it was a great idea, really good idea. They got the power plays, got 2-on-1s, the 3-on-1s, etc, etc. But it makes you wonder that if that last person got caught doing something to gain an advantage, would they go in the box as well and just leave the other team on their own? I mean, would that count them out? Or I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things, lots of questions. But besides all that, I'm going to give this one a 3 cheap shots out of 5. It was a good idea. It was a decent match. It worked kind of, if it wasn't so stop-starty. And yeah, just needed some kinks working out. I would have liked to have seen this match happen again eventually down the line, but obviously WCW is no more, so it's probably never going to happen. But it was a good match. You had 2 good, decent teams in this one, with lots of different contrasting styles in it, so it was ultimately very entertaining. Did you know that WCW had a hardcore championship? And it looked a lot different to the one that you can buy on the WWE shop or in other online retailers. Actually looked okay, this title. I mean, the original hardcore title was just ugly, man, and it was going to get half a cheap shot knocked off just for being that. But we do get a hardcore championship match, and what a match it was. It was Ming versus Terry Funk versus Crowbar, and a bit like when we get to WrestleMania, you've got Raven in between a rock and a hard place in Kane and the Big Show. Crowbar would be that person stuck in between the rock and the hard place of Ming and Terry Funk. Terry Funk is an absolute legend in the hardcore wrestling style, and Ming is just, well, merciless, for a lack of a better description. So the match starts, and they don't even get to the ring here. I mean, they just start beating each other up, and they battle into the women's toilet, into the bathroom, restroom, whatever you want to call it, and Terry Funk and Crowbar were just beating each other up, chucking bins over each other, trying to flush each other down the toilet, and Meng does eventually come and join them. Now all 3 get the heads up from the garage door, i.e. they battling out of the toilets into the garage area, where they start beating each other up again, throwing each other into the garage door. The thing that really put me off with this match, even though it's really fun, was that Daphne was screaming all the way through it. Now, I get a little bit screaming, that's fine, but all the way through, really? Calm it down, Doc, really. Just because it was just incredibly, incredibly annoying. Tongan Death Grip would be the deciding factor here on Terry Funk. It is literally just like a reverse mandible claw just underneath the chin, and takes Terry Funk down. Crowbar is nowhere to be seen, and Terry Funk gets pinned, basically. So Ming is the undisputed champion here, having walked off with the title before, and who is going to actually take it off him? Because he has the belt, he's the champion. That's what they said. But at the beginning of the match, they said, oh, he's not the champion, even though he's got the belt. So they need to really make up their mind on this one. But he had his belt on, had the belt on his person, but he's now the champion because he's won it legitimately. Really fun match, actually. I was really impressed by this one. Just a full-on backstage assault. 3.5 or 3.5 cheap shots out of 5 for this one. Really fun match. I do love my hardcore championships and stuff in the mainstream industry, because they can do a lot of things without getting over the top, because it's obviously on television and pay-per-view. And yeah, really enjoyed this one. Didn't think I was going to, being that the championship was just tacked on, but I mean, it was really fun. It was really fun. Whenever you get Terry Funk in a hardcore match, it's always going to be a laugh riot, and this is exactly what this match was. WCW Tag Team Championships on the line next. It is the Natural Born Thrillers going against the champions, the Insiders, that is Kevin Nash and Diamond Dallas Page. You've got the experience over the youthful exuberance of the Natural Born Thrillers. And it would be the Natural Born Thrillers, represented here by Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare, who is incredibly intense all the time, and I do believe that's probably the reason that he didn't go any further in WWE. the intensity that he brought. I mean, it was good, but he needed to control it a little bit more. But anyway, the impressive thing about Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo is that they can fly around like cruiserweights, and it would be the Swanton Bomb on DDP, I believe, that would get the victory here for the young tag team and give them the championships, a changing of the guard, so to speak. You know, we're banking on youth to carry us forward. And it was an okay match. It was decent, but we did get a very WCW run-in from Totally Buffed, that is Luger and Buff Bagwell, to gift that victory to the Natural Born Thrillers, who were very much hated by the fans at this point because of what they were doing. But yeah, it was decent. It was, like I say, it was old school versus new school. You got the Natural Born Thrillers who were bouncing around like cruiserweights, and then you've got the ground mat style of Totally Buffed in contrast to that. Like I say, the not Totally Buffed, the grounded mat style of the Insider, Totally Buffed, come in and gifted that victory to them by attacking the Outsiders. And we have new tag team champions. I'm going to give this one 3 cheap shots out of 5. Like I say, good match, but WCW don't disappoint with the run-ins. Shame they take more away than they give in WCW because there's so darn many of them. United States Championship on the line next. It's a First Blood chain on a pole match. I was wondering when we was going to get a variant of the on a pole match in WCW. Shane Douglas versus General Rection. Yes, that's Hugh G. Rection of the Misfits in Action, and yeah, he would change that name by February. So we got a pole match, and it is the mat style of Shane Douglas versus the, I mean, he like QG Rection was powerhouse, but he could fly as well. In fact, his finishing move was a moonsault, so to speak. So the ladder is introduced into this match really early. The General gets the chain but is pushed off the ladder, so it's not really a chain on a pole. I think, yeah, it was hung above the ring actually, so not really a chain on a pole. Pushed off the ladder and hits the ref. The Franchise retrieves the chain from his knee pad, which he had stored down there the whole time, even though the referee did check everything, make sure that they didn't have a chain there, even groping Shane Douglas at one point. And he draws First Blood on Huge Erection to win the match. And we have a new champion in Shane Douglas. But I do absolutely adore the Franchise Shane Douglas. Incidentally, I've been in a pub with Shane Douglas, albeit ready to get a talk from him. Who was, you know, he's up on stage and people were asking him questions and stuff. It was a night with Shane Douglas, which was absolutely awesome. I got my picture with him in the end, and if I can find that picture, I will post it. But you know, I paid for the picture and asked, you know, I had the, you know, went to meet him and stuff, and never really got the picture. I mean, even if it was posted online, it was something. But they did allow us to take them on the phones as well. But this match was actually good and showcased actual wrestling, even though it was a chain on a pole match. And I'm going to give this one 3.5 cheap shots out of 5. The quality keeps on rolling and rolling and rolling, which is good. And yeah, again, a wrestling match, chain on a pole, First Blood, wrestling. And finally on to the main event now, and the stipulation here is that if Goldberg loses, he leaves WCW, and it is Totally Buffed versus Goldberg and Dwayne Bruce, who is known as the Sarge from the power plant. which is down in Georgia, I believe, or was down in Georgia. Incidentally, Louis Theroux went there, so check out his episode on wrestling, professional wrestling. It's really fun, because he tries to debunk everything and then gets beaten up. It's quite funny, but I do love a bit of Louis Theroux anyway. But one thing I did note with Goldberg's entrance, obviously they knock on the door and he says, "Goldberg, it's time," and he walks out. He walks out of a basketball court. I never realised that Goldberg was, got changed in a basketball court. He's got the whole basketball court to himself. It's like going to my leisure centre and having a wrestling show there, and then him just walking out into the basketball court. Because basically that's where they have the wrestling shows when they do them. The one time they've done them. And he gets gets a whole basketball court as his dressing room, which I thought was quite funny. Goldberg earlier in the night, incidentally, gave a young fan an autograph and a picture with his dad and stuff, and that particular fan would come into play as Totally Buffed would go after the kid in question. Goldberg would come to make the save. The kid, then the Goldberg fan who's wearing the shirt and signed his pictures and stuff like that, would mace Goldberg, and this would lead to Buff Bagwell hitting the blockbuster off the shoulders of Lex Luger, and Goldberg would get pinned and retired. Sarge would put up a good fight in this match as well. There's a lot made of Sarge being really tough but not really being a wrestler, and it did come into play here, and they really played on that. But for a main event match, it was I don't think it was a main event, because we've still got Scott Steiner as well. For one of the main event matches, the showcase matches featuring Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger and Goldberg, it was a bit of a throwaway match, this one. Didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, and I'm going to give this 2.5 cheap shots out of 5 because of that. Let's say a bit of a throwaway. Hardcore tornado match might have been a little bit better, because they didn't stay on the sidelines for very long on the side of the ring. Very much reminds me of what AEW is now. No 5 counts or proper tag teaming or anything like that. Like I say, they may as well just made it a hardcore match and gave it tornado rules, and that would have made it a little bit more fun. And considering the stipulation, definitely would have given rein to Totally Buff to just break the rules all the time and get away with it. And finally, we are on to the main event. It is the WCW Championship on the line. Scott Steiner, the champion, going into this. He's going against Sid Vicious. He is going against Jeff Jarrett, and a mystery opponent brought to the ring by Flair later on, wearing one of those dog costumes that people buy so they can train them to bite criminals and stuff. Really weird. Flair goes off and gets this mystery opponent, this guy who's supposed to conquer Scott Steiner. And he comes down, he's wearing a hockey mask, and he's got the dog training get up on, and it's WCW. It really is. Ric Flair introduces the last man eventually, I've got here, and it does turn out to be Animal from the Legion of Doom. And it's like, okay, of all the people you could have got, don't get me wrong, I love the Legion of Doom, but of all the people you could have got, you got Animal from the Legion of Doom. So Flair gets the mystery opponent. Sid's, the thing that I always remember, and we've got to talk about this match, and I always will remember now, is it's the match where Sid broke his leg. And they were pestering him to do this top rope move where he jumps off and hits a big boot while landing on the other leg. He didn't want to do it. He's a 7-foot guy, he's 300 pounds, I wouldn't do it unless I was landing on both feet, and even then it would, but they pestered him, and it it happened. He jumped, he broke his leg, he hit the move, but his leg just snapped, and it's not good viewing. They did cut it out of this pay-per-view, which is good for reasons, because it's not a good thing to look at. However, you can see it on social media if you so choose. Like I say, it's not on the network, but I would find that that is not quite true when I'm watching the other shows. The mystery man then turns up, and it turns out to be Road Warrior Animal, who I've already mentioned. Jeff Jarrett's not really featured as much, although he is part of the same team as Scott Steiner, so they team up and things. Who gives Sid some mercy and clocks him round the head before Scott Steiner pins him. They pinned Sid. They didn't get him out of the ring. The man is in pain. He's broke his leg. He's shattered his leg, and they don't try and detract from it, fight outside, get the man to the back, get him some medical attention, and it made for horrible viewing. This was a poor match for the end of the show. For the main event, it was a poor match, culminating in one of the worst injuries that I've seen ever in a wrestling ring. This would ultimately end the career of Sid, although he would eventually make a return on Raw for one of Heath Slater's "I'm better than all the legends" things. And it took years of rehab, and kudos to him, the man did it. He can now walk again, which is absolutely phenomenal, because if you'd seen the state of his leg, you would say they would probably not be able to do that. So big props to Sid for that one. Like I say, poor match. I'm going to give this 1.5 cheap shots out of 5. It ultimately goes down because of Sid's leg break and the fact that Animal came down and he was dressed really daftly, and then would clock Sid over the head like he wasn't in enough pain at the time, and Sid would be pinned. I don't know if that was something that Sid said, yeah, pin me, let's finish the match, but ultimately I think the match did finish untimely because of that injury. But just get the man out of the ring, because it was like, the match wasn't great before that, but after that he just went not a great match. But Scott Steiner retains, and he goes on to Super Brawl Revenge to face Kevin Nash. Like I say, the main event was a disappointment in this one. The rest of the show was actually really decent. I really enjoyed it, but the main event sort of took this one down a peg, which is a shame. Anyway, that was WCW Sin on the 14th of January 2001. It's been 20 years exactly from the date that you are watching this video since that aired, and it is available on the WWE Network. You've been the Cheap Shot Nation. There's more retro reviews to come, including the ECW pay-per-view, which was posted last week, Guilty as Charged, as well as the Royal Rumble, which I ended up watching with my friend Josh, and we've still got 2 more WCW pay-per-views to do in the year 2001, as well as No Way Out, WrestleMania, Backlash, King of the Ring, all that kind of stuff. We're in 2001, people. It's a damn good year for wrestling in terms of WWE. The other competition, not so much, but I will see you next time. You take care of yourselves. Happy New Year, and goodbye.